high-profile China listings exploding onto the U.S. stage, Peter. We've got Alibaba, which could be one of the biggest, baddest IPOs for a Chinese company. Sina Weibo as well. But before investors get too excited, surely we have to think of some of the China-related risks these companies carry.
That's absolutely right, Tara. The China risks are very big, and actually we've just had the filing from Weibo, the big document that lists all of these risks. And there are some really quite specific ones. Some of the ones we know about, for example, the fact that they're audited by a Western auditing firm, which may not actually be allowed to do that auditing and be listed on a US exchange. That's a risk. But also some new risks, things like the fact that they don't actually know who all of their users are, and the Chinese authorities have asked them to identify all of their users, and they're not able to do that at the moment. That, they say, actually could lead in extremis to what they call termination. So some very specific China-related risks for these internet companies.
It's sounding quite familiar because we've seen this with Chinese companies listed in the States a few years ago. It continues on. But in addition, for internet companies in China, we have the sort of Silicon Valley-related risks of these types of companies.
Well, that's exactly right. You've got on the one hand, you're taking these sort of China-specific risks as an investor, which are new to these companies and which is something you don't necessarily find with the likes of Facebook and Google. But then these Chinese companies are also adopting all of the Silicon Valley's bad habits when it comes to governance. So Sina Weibo, another example of a company, is going to have two classes of shares. The insiders will get 3 times as many votes as the outsiders. Alibaba, as we know, has been in dispute with the Hong Kong authorities about its proposed listing because it wants to have its insiders nominate the majority of the board directors, and that's something it will be able to do in the US. So as an investor, you've got to bear in mind there's a lot of hype about these stocks, and these companies are clearly growing very quickly. Sina Weibo wasn't around in 2009 and is now generating $180 million a year in revenue. But you've got to bear in mind, on the one hand, these are Chinese companies and there are very specific problems with Chinese companies. On the other hand, as an external shareholder buying into these IPOs, you're going to have very limited ability to really influence the company at all.
Hot stocks, big companies, China developing fast, but also some big risks for these internet firms.